And we're live. Hello, darling Donna.
Hello, fabulous Tamarin. It's so great to be with you. Yay.
It's really wonderful to be speaking with you. I'm super excited to be chatting, because although you and I have become wonderful friends and have been on a very similar journey in that you've recently given birth to a beautiful son, and I am at any moment, quite literally, going to be giving birth to a daughter.
I know, I'm so excited we managed to get this in before you do.
I know, I've been calling it digital pottering, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're not supposed to be working. I'm like, this isn't working. This is digital pottering around the house, meeting with fabulous people like you. And although you and I have known each other and have connected really wonderfully over the past few years, I don't think I've ever introduced you to the Differently community. So I'm so excited to be doing that now. And I've been following you. I've been following your mini programs, and I just wanted to invite you to have a chat and to share a little bit of your story and how it is you became known as the fairy godmother, because that's really what you're up to. So maybe we can start there. Tell us a little bit about how that came to be.
Yeah, so I have been doing my work in the personal development arena since 2005. And before that time, I was a burnt out, stressed out entrepreneur. And I had sold a business, and I decided to take a sabbatical. I decided to go to South America. I needed time out. I was really feeling super burnt out.
Wow.
And I went off to South America, and I did 9 months traveling around the continent. I had always wanted to learn how to speak Spanish. And I was like, okay, this is my opportunity. And I'd always wanted to go to South America. So I went traveling around South America, and I was thinking about, okay, well, what's next for me? But also having just the most amazing time running through rainforests and meditating on mountains and partying on the beaches of Brazil.
And you're going to be making so many people jealous right now with probably this like travel claustrophobia happening. Even I feel like going to South America right now.
Exactly right. And yeah, it was the freedom lifestyle that you teach about. It was like that, it was amazing. And about 5 or 6 months into my trip, I was traveling in Argentina on a night bus, and I had the most amazing, I can only describe it as an epiphany experience. So I was traveling in the night, and the buses in Argentina have like almost like business class seats for airlines. They're almost like going to go all the way back. They recline all the way back. Cool. And I was fast asleep in the seat, and I suddenly woke up, and I had this urge to write. And it was like, I've got to write. And I grabbed my travel journal out of my bag, and I started to write. And I had this experience of prolific writing, almost like writing channeling through me. It was the most profound, crazy, woo-woo experience I've ever had in my life. And all sorts of things were coming out as I was writing. And when I say prolific, it was over 50 pages, Tamarin. It went on for hours. It was over 50 pages in this travel journal of mine.
Wow. While you're in the bus?
While I'm in the bus, traveling at like amazing. 3 a.m. in the morning.
Oh right? My gosh.
And it was all sorts of things were coming out. Chapter headings for books, and thoughts about my life, and thoughts like kind of big, amazing existential thoughts. And it was almost like, the best way, I was almost like I was vomiting myself up on a page. It was like this kind of cathartic, crazy, woo-woo experience. And at the end of it, in 2 very coherent, neat little paragraphs, came out the purpose for my life. And it started by saying, I am a fantastically fabulous and magical fairy godmother. And went on in those 2 paragraphs, literally just to say, and I'll give you a synopsis, that my purpose is to help people get clear on their dreams and goals and vision for their life, and to help them understand that it is possible to live any way that you want to live.
Wow.
And so I felt expanded, I felt excited, I felt ignited. I had never felt that way. It was just the biggest feeling of connection to body, mind, soul, spirit, everything, expansive. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I've got to do. And I read back through some of that, what I'd written as I was sitting in that bus. And you know that little voice of self-doubt that starts chattering away to you in your ear?
Yes.
Yeah. And that little voice was like, you're a fairy godmother? Are you crazy? Like, that's like so weird. That's like crazy talk. And the weird thing is, Tamarin, I'd never been a fairy girl. I'd been like a tomboy climbing trees. Like, fairies weren't my gig. I'd been like a marketing exec, had my own businesses, wasn't into this kind of stuff at all. But it felt so expanded and it felt so purposeful and I felt so amazing. I was like, this is it. And so I went to the nearest internet cafe, because that was the days before ubiquitous internet. And I went to the nearest internet cafe when I got off that night bus, and I sent an email to every single person in my Gmail address book. And it said, I've had an epiphany in a night bus in Argentina, and this is my purpose.
Oh, wow.
And I hope you'll support me with it. And as you can imagine, I got some very, very interesting responses to that email.
Yes, I mean, I've sent out similar emails to personal contact email lists, and I can only imagine it didn't say anything as bold as that, so I can only imagine.
Yeah, so they were definitely friends and family and past work colleagues I even sent it to, right? And it got out to everyone. And, people were saying, do we need to fetch you? Are you okay? What have you been eating or smoking or taking in South America? But it felt so amazing and it felt so compelling. And when I came back to South Africa, people started saying to me, okay, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to be a fairy godmother. And people all thought I was absolutely crazy. And I thought I was a little bit crazy. And I had no idea what being a fairy godmother meant, what it looked like, what it was going to be about. And so that was in 2005. So fast forward to 2020, 15 years later, I've had this amazing 15-year journey of being a fairy godmother. And what being a fairy godmother looks like now is, over the last 15 years, I've helped thousands of people in 45 countries around the world get clear on their dreams, their goals, their vision for their lives and how to make it happen. So I teach in that area. I also teach in the area of money and wealth and finances, because one of the big things that I found was one of the biggest blocks for people around their dreams and goals and making it happen is money. So 10 years ago, I started teaching in the area of money. And I had, funnily had a background of studying finance and, have an honors degree in finance and all of those kinds of things, and had gone through my own money journey in becoming a fairy godmother. Previously, I had been very abundant and plentiful and being able to make money. And then when I became a fairy godmother and started living my purpose, the first few years, I found like I was so happy living my purpose, but the money wasn't flowing. And oh my goodness. And I wrestled with my own demons around that and my own belief systems and my own scarcity thoughts and all of those things, and shifted that. And out of that, started then teaching other people how to do the same. And so I run a program called Money Magic. And then I've been blessed to go to all over the world and do retreats. In Germany and the USA and the UK and Portugal and South Africa. So I run retreats and workshops and these online programs. And most recently, I've developed a new body of work, which I'm so excited about. And that came out last year, called the 7 Levels of Abundance, which is really how to live your most abundant, fully expressed, vital, juiciest life.
Wow. What a 15 years. I mean, just as I was listening to the amount of the body of work that you've put together, and as I say, I'm in some of your communities and have just seen the high level of quality and support that you've been able to provide all of your students all around the world. And I want to jump into this last one you just mentioned, abundance, in a moment. But a question popped up for me while you were speaking, and I was just hearing how you went from bus to email to everyone, which must have been terrifying.
It was. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like I said, I never even told anybody I'm the fairy godmother while I was in a bus in Argentina, but I have emailed every person I've ever met who's ever had any email contact with me saying, hey, here's my new project. And I know you can break into a serious sweat and be terrified of the answers. I know in those, I mean, I'm only about 5 years into my kind of digital space journey. And I think I avoided opening my email inbox for like days, terrified, kind of, if you don't look at your inbox, then you won't, what's in there can't hurt you, kind of ostrich approach. So what I want to ask you is, how did you get the courage to do that and to continue for 15 years? Have you got any hypothesis around that, or maybe even an answer you've pondered?
Yeah, I've got a lot. A lot. So how did I get the courage to do it in the first place? When I read over it and that little self-doubt voice started coming in to my ear, I had known that self-doubt voice before. And because I was feeling so expanded and so elated and so abundant and so like, oh my goodness, this is it. Like I get goosebumps now when I still think about it.
Wow.
Because I felt that feel, and it's really anchored deeply into me. When I felt that feeling, it felt so amazing. And I thought, I knew the power of declaration.
Right.
When you declare things and put things out there and speak things into the world, this is one of the most powerful ways to manifest. It's one thing to think something. The next level of creation is speaking it. And then the last level of creation is action in the world. And so I knew that if I declared it and took some action around it, it would make it real. And if I didn't declare it, then this voice would get so loud and so doubtful and so fearful that it would come and squash this thing that I was experiencing. And I thought, am I prepared for this to be some little incident that I had one night on a night bus in Argentina that was lovely? Or am I really going to follow this incredible energy of this and just allow it to move through me?
Yes.
And I thought, I've got to declare it.
This idea of action as the antidote, I use that phrase quite a lot with people that I work with who are paralyzed. And it's certainly the principle that I use, because people ask some things that people looking in on my life seem like difficult or outrageous or courageous. And I say, you know what, it's action. And then it's momentum after that.
Yeah. And so for me, the next thing was then going and writing that email. And as I wrote it, I thought initially I was like, oh, let me send it to the people who I know will receive it. Right?
Yes, well, the safe space.
The safe thing. And then I thought, no, if this really is a true declaration, I shouldn't be scared to share it. If this is truly who I am in the world with this purpose, I shouldn't be afraid to share it with anyone. And so I ticked at that stage the 423 people who were in my contact list, and off it went. And again, it was like previous clients of mine, right? Previous brand managers of like Peter Stuyvesant cigarettes and all of it. Like it was crazy. And off it went. And one of the greatest values to me in doing that, and then secondly, in then taking a stand of being this weird thing called a fairy godmother, also this weird thing that no one understood at that time. I also started running online programs in 2009 before most people had even heard of an online program, had even been on an online program. People were like, what's a webinar? I had to explain it. So the amazing thing was, because I kept taking these courageous leaps, and because I got met quite a few times with people's not understanding it, or rejection, or like, I stopped taking what other people think seriously. And that has been one of the greatest gifts for me. At one stage, I started wearing fairy wings. So it took me about 1.5 years to get the courage to like be like, right, here are my fairy wings, and here I'm a fairy godmother. And I would like, go and do my seminars with my fairy wings. And, some people would be like, oh, that's weird. And I was just like, you know what? Then you're not my people.
Yes.
And it was such a revelation for me that not everyone's going to like me. Not everyone's going to resonate with me. And the most important thing for me is to do what gives me joy and to do what fills me up and to live my purpose, not anyone else's. And this is something that I coach a lot of my students on, because when they're coming up with their dreams and their goals and their vision for their life, they often find resistance around, oh, what are the people that I love going to think about this new version of me, or the outlandish thing, or what are other people going to think, or what are other people going to say? And so this has given me so much power to be able to coach people and teach people and train people to keep taking their own stand for who they are and their purpose in the world.
But I love that you mentioned it took time, because anybody listening, whether you're watching live or you're listening in an audio format or you're watching the replay, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great. Donna can do that. But that's terrifying for me, because right now I can't imagine, prancing on the stage with wings, or tomorrow. But I really want to appreciate that you mentioned it took you like a year or year and a half, I think you said, before you were fully able to embody and have the kind of physical elements of what it means for you to be the fairy godmother. Because what that speaks to for me is that things are a process.
Completely.
And anybody
people,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think we live in such a world that is there's so much prolific quick fixing. And so much being sold out there as the quick fix, that, and a lot of my work, my teaching, my programs are about teaching people real sustainable tools, that you've got the tools to keep using through the journey and the process. Because guess what? You know what? Once you reach one level of expansion, you're going to be cruising and you're going to be fabulous and you're going to be enjoying it and basking, and you're going to hit a comfort zone, and then life is going to send you the next level of problem, challenge to expand you and grow you. And the bigger your toolkit, we never get given just this magic pill that like, oh, it's all fabulous and it's all wonderful, right?
Yes.
There's always the next level of expansion, and always the next level of expansion. And if you can just keep increasing your toolkit with what works for you to expand to the next level, or if you get thrown into challenge, if you can go, right, I'm thrown into challenge, now I need more tools, and go out and get them, great.
And that's one of the things that stands out for me, particularly about the last program you mentioned, your latest program, is that it's quite a long-term program. If I remember correctly, it's like a 6-month experience, which is about layer and process. And I want to come back to that in a moment. But first, I want to just circle back to what you mentioned about being afraid of what people think if you're doing things a little differently. Because I mean, hello, differently is this name of
what
this
you're all about.
And I can resonate with that. And I think anybody who's joined this community, whether it's because they're seeking more freedom in their life, or they just have a hunch that they know that doing things a little differently is for them, I want to hear from you about how you knew that you couldn't fit in the what I call the traffic and TV life. You left what sounds like was probably a successful, probably lucrative, kind of traditional business, gallivanted around South America, came back, decided that you were going to work as the fairy godmother. How did you know that this different kind of path was for you? Online business in 2009. I mean, I consider myself pretty tech savvy, and I did not know anything about an online business existing in 2009. So you were seriously different, really early. What is it? How did that happen?
So it goes even before being a fairy godmother, actually. Like, fairy godmother was just the next kind of level of expansion out into pioneering. I have generally been a pioneer in my life. Like, that's one of the kind of feelings that I have. If in hindsight, now that I look back, and about 5 years ago, I managed to peg it and go, wow, I'm a pioneer. And I tend to see things early. It's also one of the reasons why I love to teach people about vision and dreams and goals, because, and in the 7 Levels of Abundance program, one of the things that I teach about is we use the chakra system as a diagnostic tool for abundance. And so in chakra speak, for some of you that might go over your head, but we'll talk more about that later. You know, I'm very third eye open, visionary, seeing future things. And this came about, I think, because when I was going into high school, I was, you know, from a very kind of middle class background. I'd been at a all girls school for primary school, and I really wanted to go to a co-ed school for high school. And my parents sent me to a Greek school because my parents wanted me to go to a private high school. And at that stage, there were very few private co-ed high schools in Johannesburg, where I grew up. And one of them was a Greek school, and that was kind of close by. And so I got thrown in from an English family into a Greek school where 90% of the other kids were Greek, from Greek families. And so essentially from the get-go, I was different.
You can say that again.
Which in a high school environment, and when you're a teenager, if you can imagine, when you're a teenager, all you want to do is belong. And all you want to do is be the same. And you particularly want to be the same as the cool kids.
Right. Yeah.
And I definitely wasn't the same because I was not Greek. And it was very liberating at the age of 13 to be thrown into a completely different culture and be met with a completely different culture. It opened my mind up in ways that I'm so grateful for today. And
Right.
so when it came to me looking at life, and when I started questioning everything. And when I started then going to university, you know, I was keen not to go to university, but my parents begged me. They said, like, you have to, it's the route.
You have to have something
and I got
to
to
fall
university.
back on.
Yeah, you know, this is the route. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. I want to get stuck in. I want to do life. And they were like, no, please promise us, just go to university. We'll pay, just go. And I was like, okay. And off I went to university, and I signed up for this business science degree because, you know, what am I going to do? Business, okay, finance degree. And within a week of being at varsity, I ended up at UCT Radio, DJing and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. Wow, who wants to sit in lectures when I can be a DJ on a radio station? And it was in 1994, just as broadcasting licenses were opening up, and we got our broadcast, and we could actually broadcast and people could hear us, and it was so cool. And then next thing, you know, within a year, I started my first business, which was a student media business. And so
Wow.
There was nothing ever for me that was kind of conventional. And within that experience, it was like, I'm not going to be living a conventional life. You know, a few years later, in 1999, I found myself in San Francisco in Silicon Valley, being part of an internet startup team. We raised $2.5 million. We then lost $2.5 million. We then left very quickly because, like, oh my goodness. So there was like a whole lot of like, life is not, I don't want to be the TV dinner, the traffic, like that's never appealed to me.
Yes. And I just think somebody listening in to what you've just said is such a validating set of experiences and stories that you've just shared, which is why I wanted to just dive into them, because if ever you're listening and you just know you've got that kind of niggling knowing inside of you, know that you're not alone. You know, people like Donna, like myself, like a lot of people in the different community just refuse basically to accept that here's your path, or this is what your parents said, this is what everyone else is doing, so this is what you have to do, and that there's so many other options available to you once you've got this understanding, which brings me to the topic that we put on ice, Donna. A word that is fairly new to me. In fact, I only got introduced to this word at an event that you and I were both at, maybe 2 years ago now in Cape Town, where an incredible woman stood on stage and talked about a documentary she made and she talked about something called abundance. And what brought you and I to be having this conversation now is, I know that you have this whole body of teaching around abundance, and you have a webinar that's coming up soon, or that is available from time to time throughout the year if you're listening to this in the future, where you teach about abundance. And I really just want to allow you an opportunity to inform me again, like I did that first time on stage, but anybody else who's listening who hasn't heard this term before, because when I first heard it, it sounds to me just like, I don't know, like nature, like bounty of nature, but actually it's got a whole body of work and a whole set of understanding around how to be and how to live, and in fact how to live differently. So you mentioned that it's your latest work and it's your latest program, and I feel so lucky that you can teach us what the concept is.
Yeah. So the fascinating thing for me is that you've said abundance feels to you like the bounty of nature. Like that's how you would connect to it first, before you heard about it in an.
Absolutely. And it's actually the reason I live where I live, because for me it feels abundant. I live on the north coast of KZN, on the east coast of South Africa, where it's subtropical and it's green and it's lush and it's foresty. And for me, that is what feeling comes up for me if I hear the word abundance.
Yeah. Yeah. And what other feelings come with that, Tamarin?
Just fruitfulness and lush and growth and life and, all of these. I mean, yeah, juicy, I guess. The word I'm trying to describe, like busting at the seams, this sort of imagery that comes up for me when I hear the word abundant. But I never imagined that applied to people or lives. And that's the fascinating connection that I'd love to explore.
So you can imagine that it connects to the plants and the lushness.
Yes.
And obviously we know that we are part of nature and we're animals. So of course we can be lush and bountiful and growing and expanding and one of the biggest connections for me around abundance is that abundance is the natural flow of life. Okay. Abundance is one of the main life force energies that's coming through. It is life force energy. Now, if you look in nature, you might say, yeah, okay, but hold on. But there are times of scarcity, right? So there's abundance and there's scarcity, and isn't that a polarity? And there are times of scarcity. Well, yes, you might look in nature and say, okay, there's a drought. So that's scarce. That looks like scarcity. But what you'll find is that if you look at the system as a whole, the system is always coming back into equilibrium and balance. That's what the natural system is always bringing us back into: equilibrium and balance, equilibrium and balance. So while there might be drought on the one side, and that might impact certain ecosystems, the other ecosystems thrive. Other parts of the ecosystem thrive because of the drought, right? And so what happens is there's this continual flow of energy moving. And as the energy moves, it brings into equilibrium and balance. And essentially, how that applies to us as human beings is that the natural life force that flows through us is abundance. And the more we allow that to flow through us, the more we will be able to be vital, well, in ease, expressed, loving, giving, purposeful, intuitive, etc. Right? So often people hear the word abundance, and many people come to me and say, oh, abundance, that sounds amazing. Yes, I want lots of money.
Sure, because that's like the human version of lush. It's flush. I can believe that.
Cash, look, it's very pretty. Woohoo, right? And so my abundance work came about was I was teaching people in the area of, so I've been doing my money teaching for the last
I can hear you.
Oh, you got me. Okay, great. So I was doing my money magic program. I also do financial flow for entrepreneurs, and I was teaching. What I was seeing is, for some people, they could shift their beliefs and move into abundance thinking, and other people was 2017. I was feeling incredibly abundant. I was feeling connected and grounded and abundant and amazing, and business had been going well for me, and I've been growing my program. And the beginning of 2018, something happened that rocked my world, but I didn't realize it. It happened on a complete subgro. Now, I'm not sure how many of you know what day zero is. Tamron, were you living in the Cape at the time?
In 2018?
Yeah.
No, I was already here in KZN.
You were already on KZN. So what happened was there was a massive drought in the Western Cape, and there was this huge thing about water is going to run out.
Yeah.
And there's going to be this day zero that happens. And that's going to be the day that the water runs out and we're not going to have water.
And it was terrifying. I mean, I was following it from a distance. Do you know, I kind of call myself a water refugee, because a big factor for us leaving the Western Cape was me not being, I was pregnant in 2017, and I couldn't imagine living like that. So we kind of joke and call ourselves water refugees coming to KZN. It influenced that decision.
Yeah. So I didn't realize it at the time. But at a subconscious level, at an unconscious level, it started to rock my world. Yeah. And I started to hook into what I call scarcity consciousness, right? Yes. Like, oh my goodness, there's not enough resource to go around. Oh my goodness, like we're in trouble. Just like this COVID-19 thing has rocked people's world. So it's a very similar thing. Whether you're feeling it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not, let me tell you, this COVID-19 thing is deeply rocking.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And around at the level of survival, scarcity, or, you know, what about resources, being confined, all of that stuff. So, so my scarcity moment was this day zero thing. I then went into a whole lot of scarcity kind of actions that I started taking, not even realizing that I was in scarcity. So one of my scarcity actions is that I start doing a lot. I start getting into action, and I start doing, and I start overdoing, and I try to compensate for feelings of inadequacy, scarcity, insecurity by doing. It's one of the things, by being busy.
Yes.
And I found this going into my work. But what I also found was the more I was doing, the less impact, the less results. In fact, in 2017, my business had doubled in that year. In 2018, it was going backwards. And I was like, what the hell is this? And I was kind of watching, I was doing more work, I was doing more stuff. But the energy around it was this scarcity consciousness, was this fear, was this there isn't enough to go around. It was this.
And what I like about the framing, if you're hearing the word scarcity and abundance for the first time, is I sometimes see the word scarcity, which obviously comes from being scarce, broken up into scare-city, like coming from a place of fear. And I see that you sometimes, Donna, also talk about it as like scarcity, almost these two places, like fear and hurt, or fear and injury. And I think that's a really significant framing. And obviously there's lots of ways to learn more from Donna. In fact, I'll make sure there's a link with wherever you're watching this for her next event. She's got a webinar coming up. I think it's Monday. Is it Monday?
Yes, Monday, 27th of July.
Yes. So if you want to learn in more depth, I'm sure basically can't run a huge masterclass now, but you do have a masterclass on this exact topic coming up on Monday that I
Exactly.
encourage you
And
to
we're going to
sign
go
up
into
for.
more detail. And I'm also going to, on that masterclass, help people feel into where in their bodies and where in their energy systems their scarcity blocks sit. So you'll come out of that masterclass. It is all of my teaching, Tamarin. I like it to be super practical, and I like people to have like a full-on body, mind, soul experience. So it's not just going to be me chit chat. You're going to be doing exercises, and you're going to be like, wow, I can feel where some of the blocks are.
So what you're saying is that that block happens in a physicality kind of way, not just a mentality, because I've always thought about scarcity as a kind of only related to thinking.
Yeah. So scarcity can absolutely be related to thinking, but consider, Tamarin, that we are body, mind, soul beings, right?
Sure.
We are made, that's how we are made up. So you can't just have something that's at a mind level that is not impacting the body and at a soul level too. So if something, if you are in scarcity mentality, let me tell you, there is impact in the body, and you'll be able to feel it in the body. And all of my teaching, whether it's about dreams and goals, or whether it's about money, or whether it's about abundance, I do it at what is it at a mental level? Where is it at an emotional level? Where is it at the physical level? And where is it at the spiritual level? Because holistic, like that's what abundance is about. Abundance is about the holistic system. It's about bringing the holistic system into equilibrium and balance so that you are thriving.
Wow.
Because the more you're in equilibrium and balance, the more you thrive, the more you thrive, the more you thrive. Now, equilibrium and balance is the goal, but we also live in a world of polarity. So that means that you will be pendulum swung, right? There will be times of challenge like we're currently experiencing, and then there will be times of basking in the fruits of your abundance, and then there'll be challenge, etc. But the idea is to be able to easily have the tools so you can keep coming back into balance and equilibrium. And so that you are responding to life rather than reacting out of what you're calling the scarcity, the fears, or reacting out of your scarcity, which is your previous injuries or your previous wounds or hurts that have happened in the past to you.
Right. And I'm so glad you mentioned this pendulum reality, because there are some kind of schools of thought where, and you see this in the kind of memes that get shared a lot on the Facebook streets, where there's just only allowed this positivity, which is just unrealistic. It's not the cycle of nature, you know.
It's bullshit is what it is. Let's be frank. It is bull. Like anyone who's out there peddling to you, like it's only positive thinking and like life is all going to be like woo, 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 fabulous all the time, run a mile, please. There is no magic pill that you're going to pop and then like everything is going to be fabulous. That's not why we're here. We are here to live the polarities of life, to feel the pleasure and to feel the pain, both of them in their immense intensity, and to experience it with all five of our senses and get the juice out of all of those experiences. The key is that we often, as human beings, get trapped in either one or the other. We get trapped in the pleasure, the hedonism, or we get trapped in the pain and the suffering and the whatever, rather than being in this natural flow, coming back to equilibrium and balance, coming like enjoying it for what it is. And, you know, some people might be hearing this and saying, well, how can you possibly enjoy the pain? And, you know, enjoyment might be the wrong word, but certainly feeling it and experiencing it. And I found this in my own life. As you're able to include things, because we live in a culture that's very much suppression against the negative and inclusion of the positive, which is what you're talking about, like all these memes, positive, and let's exclude the negative. And in my 7 levels of abundance, one of my key teachings is when we include things, everything, we can then transcend it. So when we include the pain, when we include the, oh my goodness, I'm terrified out of my mind about this COVID stuff, right? Or it's really rocking my world, and let me acknowledge that and include it and just be with it, then you can transcend it.
Yeah.
And so the idea behind this program is to give you the tools that you can keep going through experiences and experiencing them and then transcending them so that you reach the next level of expansion, growth. Now, for some people, the next level of expansion and growth looks like health and vitality in the body. For other people, the next level of expansion and growth looks like financial or business success, or finding your purpose, or being connected to the divine in a more soulful, amazing way, or being more productive, or being more loving and compassionate, or connecting better in relationships. And so that's the beautiful thing about this work for me. And one of the reasons why it is 7 months, Tamarin, so that there's a lot of time and spaciousness for my students to really practice the tools, because there's nothing worse than having a program that you're going through and now you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed out about getting all the work done and doing the tools. And that's scarcity in itself, right? Time scarcity. Oh my gosh, I don't have the time.
Most online programs are like that. I mean, any of the huge, like big name ones that I've done, they're like,
yeah,
da, 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 and you don't leave with a sense of ease or implement. You don't even do it.
Exactly. And so, you know, one of the reasons why I specifically made this 7 months, and I'd never done this length of program before. Number one, because I have thousands of students that have worked with me on other programs, and they were like, yes, we'd love to work with you for 7 months. And then the other reason was also because I wanted to give people spaciousness. I wanted it to feel like you've got time and space and it's abundance rather than,
Yes. Well, I want to hear the end of the story you started telling us about the scarcity thinking that creeped in to your life with this day zero, where the day Cape Town was going to run out of water, and I'm assuming you becoming aware that that's the tape you were running in your own head is what gave birth to this teaching you give on abundance now. Is that there must have been a pivotal moment, a kind of sliding door moment maybe, or a shift, and then some kind of a transformation into abundance for you. And how did that all, tell us that part of the story?
Yeah, so what happened was I was working super hard, long hours, doing more and more. My results were going backwards. My business turnover was decreasing, not increasing. And one of the other things is I've been teaching in the area of money for 10 years. I've been putting into place a lot of my own, you know, tools, etc. So I then looked at it and thought, I am panicking and getting all heads up. Oh, my partner, Jeff, his business was going through a tumultuous stage as well. And I looked at the reality and I thought, hold on, the reality is that I have been building wealth for the last, at that stage, it was 7 or 8 years, right? I have millions and millions invested. And I am in a massive panic that feels like tomorrow I might not be able to eat or survive or whatever, right?
Yes.
And I just thought, this doesn't add up. Like something is going on here that just is not, like there's no logic to it. And what I realized was that financial abundance has nothing to do with this level of feeling of scarcity. And that scarcity conditioning is something that's happened, and we've been deeply conditioned around scarcity in our upbringings. And so I have done a lot of my own personal development work and a lot of different work through the years. And one of the kind of modalities of work that I have been involved in is a lot of energy work and energy healing work. And this was my own personal work and chakra work. And I thought, wow. And I was on a retreat in Portugal. I was running a retreat in Portugal for a whole lot of my clients. And it was while we were doing this very deep breathing breath exercise. And if you think about it in this minute, right, like one of the clearest signs that we are abundant is that if you take a big deep breath now, right, there's air. And you never ever think, will there be air? you never ever panic and think, oh my goodness, the air is running out, right? It is
Yeah.
abundant, it's natural, and life force, like the quickest way to connect to life force and life force energy is through the breath. And that's one of the quickest ways to connect to abundance. So I teach a lot of breathing through the 7 levels of abundance, how to breathe in different, and how to use different breathing techniques to shift certain blocks. But I digress. So I was doing this deep breathing exercise with my clients on this retreat in Portugal. And out of the blue, I had this inspiration, very clear, almost like that night bus in Argentina. You have to run a program. It's called the 7 levels of abundance. It's based on the chakra system. Go and write it. And I feel so blessed that I get this kind of like divine guidance.
Yes.
And I'm also feel so blessed, and we all get it, is the bottom line. But I feel so blessed that I've been through the journey enough times that I know to listen, and I know to, as we say, declare and then act.
Yes. Well, that's the second story like that, and it reminds me of a book called Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And I don't know if you've read it or listened to it. I listened to it actually when I was on a beautiful safari in Nairobi. I only listen to books in audio, so it's kind of meshed together this experience of driving through the savannah and hearing these crazy stories about ideas. And in Big Magic, Elizabeth Gilbert talks about an idea as if it's a separate entity from you that kind of possesses you, which sounds very similar to how you've described it.
Yeah, I have that experience. I have the experience. It's all, whatever you want to call the divine, whatever the divine is for you, literally plants a seed for me and just goes this, and it is as clear as that. And the sensation that I get when it happens is goosebumply. It is I feel very expanded. I feel very inspired. I feel very alive. And these are also all the signifiers of abundance. And so it's like, oh, that's a yes. I feel it in my body. I feel it mentally. And I feel it at a soul level. And it's like, yes, boom. And so then, and then I know I have to act on that. As we've talked about before, it's not like, oh, I have to act on it and it's necessary like the next day. Again, these things are processes, right? So I did that retreat in Portugal in October. I came back, I started working on my own stuff as I was working through the processes, and I was like, okay, yes. Started putting together the program. And in 2019, I ran the program for the first time, and we ran it for 7 months. I had some of my most amazing students come and do it with me. And one of the biggest, most amazing things for me out of the program has been to have had that body of students go through it, to now be going through a coronavirus and it's COVID time.
Yes.
And I've been checking in on them now that I've come out of my maternity leave, and like, how are you doing? And there's stories of how they've slipped into the challenge or slipped into the fear and then used the tools to shift out quickly has been so inspiring to me. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a kind of resilience, or almost a kind of resilience training that is essential in a time where we're not used to having to be so resilient. I mean, talking about current times, so we're recording this in July 2020, where we've been in the midst of the corona coaster for the last few months. And when I started releasing a lot of content kind of in the beginning in March and February around helping people pivot and adjust, and I talked about how, we haven't had to deal with anything like this. 100 years ago, people were dealing with wars and Spanish flu, and there was a level of resilience that was built up just from having to. And basically, things have been pretty okay in our lifetime, maybe even our parents' lifetime. So
pretty groovy, actually, not just
pretty,
okay, like super groovy.
Exactly, it's been quite abundant, and we haven't built the tools within ourselves. So something that helps us do that, whether it's understanding 7 levels of abundance or any other tools that you can help yourself be more resilient is a really essential thing to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be running my program again now. You know, for me, it was fascinating because I literally had my baby, Luke, the week before lockdown happened. Then lockdown happened, and I was going to be on maternity leave anyway. And you and I had a lot of discussions, and you had, you know, in our own personal friendship capacity, and you'd said to me, the postpartum period is really important. The 40 days afterwards, really important. And so I'd already stocked my pantry. I'd bought my toilet paper for 40 days because I was going to be like in this like baby 40-day period.
Yes.
I had no idea the rest of the world was coming in with me. Like,
yes.
and so for me, what was fascinating was I was sort of cocooned from it initially, because I was so involved in baby and that, and you know, my partner Jeff was listening to it and he was connecting, and his business has just literally dissolved into nothingness because he has to travel offshore. And again, seeing how much the abundance training has helped me and him not panic, not go into craziness, not go into, you know, we've wobbled and then we've managed to come out of it very quickly around those kinds of things. And he, you know, so he was tapping into it, and I was like, I don't want to know. I'm like, I'm a new mama and I've got this baby and that's it. So when I suddenly poked my head out, probably only about a month ago, and then realized what was going on in the world, I was like, wow. And then I thought, which body of work is real, or which of my work can I lead with now?
Yes.
And the 7 levels of abundance work was so obvious because it's the work that trains you that despite whatever is going on, whatever the circumstances, you can keep coming into equilibrium and balance, and then keep growing and expanding through it.
Just 2 things to bring us to a close. The first one is I popped into a Facebook Live you were doing recently, I guess in one of your communities, and heard that your son was conceived during the level related to, I'm going to get the language wrong, but basically when you were doing things to do with like your base and to do with the pelvis, I guess.
Yeah, so the sacral chakra, which is the second chakra, it's the orange chakra. And if you put your hand on your kind of belly, the base is the root chakra, which is right at the base, and sort of where your uterus would be. I mean, you can feel it now, pregnant mama.
Yes.
Okay, you're all sacral chakra, basically.
I'm not confused about where my uterus is right now. In fact, it's basically in shot of what we're doing.
Chakra has just gone woof, right?
Exactly.
And that sacral chakra is the seat of our primal creativity. So creativity, reproduction, sexuality, sensuality, polarity, pleasure, pain, emotions, fluidity is all in this area. Yeah, Luke was conceived during sacral chakra months. And what was fascinating for me was that one of my deficient areas, because as I go through programs and as I facilitate programs, I keep doing the work. And it's one of the benefits of doing these kinds of programs, that I keep learning, I keep growing, I keep doing the work. And I love that about running programs. And so one of the things that I realized was that I was root chakra deficient. And so you can be excessive in a chakra, which literally means that the energy is spurting out, like there's too much energy, right? And it's spurting out and going all over the place. Or you can be deficient, in other words, like there's a block and the energy is not going through properly.
Right.
Okay. And I was root chakra deficient, pretty much because I was an incubator baby for the first 5 or 6 weeks of my life. And so, you know, chakras develop as we're developing and grow up. And so my feelings of safety, survival, which is one of the reasons why I got so impacted by day 0, because I was root chakra deficient.
Wow.
So my feelings of safety, survival, groundedness in the world was always a little shaky. And as I was doing the work through the 7 levels of abundance program, as I was writing it and then facilitating it with the group, I was doing all of the exercises, the grounding exercises, the root chakra meditations, the breathing, the mudras, all of the things that I teach, all of the tools that I teach. And I was like, oh, this was the piece that's been missing for me in some of my manifestations. And that's the piece of just really grounding it into physical reality. And one of my big dreams in the last few years has been to be a mama. And for a few years it hadn't happened, but I know that I'm in my 40s. So like, who knows if it's going to happen or not.
Sure.
And then literally as we were doing Sacral Chakra Month and we were clearing the energy around this reproductive organs, the creativity, sexuality, sensuality, boom, Luke was conceived. And I was like, wow.
That is absolutely amazing and crazy and incredible and wild and fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so he's definitely a chakra baby. And it's been amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Donna, for those who've been listening, who are very curious to come to your class on Monday, there's no cost except for signing up with your email address. What can they expect? What if somebody's curious to learn and hear more? Oh, I see Kitty. Hello, Kitty, in the background there.
So what you can expect is that it is an hour and 45 minutes. All of my master classes are highly interactive and participative. So please don't think you're just going to be coming and sitting and just like listening in the background. You are going to be participating.
Yes.
Yeah. You're going to be participating and you're going to be literally feeling and finding out where some of your scarcity blocks sit. So we're going to be I'm going to be introducing you to the chakra system, how it works, what it is. Some of you will already know what chakras are. Great. Some of you will be like, what? So I will share with you, the chakras are an incredible diagnostic tool that really help us see where our blocks are from a mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual perspective. It's it is ancient wisdom, and it's just phenomenal. And so I will share that with you, and then we're going to be doing I'm going to be sharing with you what the 7 levels of abundance are and the 7 levels of scarcity are. And you can see where things fit from a mental perspective. And then I'm going to be taking you through a closed eye exercise. And energetically, you're going to actually be able to feel in your body where some of the blocks and things sit. And I'm going to be giving you some ways to shift that and some ways to continue working with me.
Wow, that sounds amazing. As I mentioned right in the beginning of this call, that I am literally waiting on my baby to decide to arrive. She could quite literally arrive any day now. She's technically due on Sunday. And I'm kind of, as you're talking, I'm like, holy shit, I'll have such FOMO if I can't come on Monday night because I'm either giving birth or having just given birth. So hopefully Michael will cooperate and I can attend, because that sounds amazing. And I'm so excited that you're sharing that information that you've learned with everyone. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and your stories with the Differently community. And I really want to invite anybody who's watching to go ahead and sign up for Donna's webinar, because as you've heard, she has been teaching people longer than anybody I know, and offers an extreme level of insight and support, much more than anyone I've seen who has an online community. So thank you so much for that, Donna.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And I'm so privileged to do this work. I'm so privileged to live the life that I live. And it's so fabulous to be connected to people like you who are thinking differently, who are creating and living your own freedoms. It's just, thank you.
Yeah, for abundance. It's been such a exactly. It's been such a pleasure to chat. I'm gonna, I'll keep in touch around when baby Micah decides to arrive, but hopefully I'll see you live on your call on Monday. And enjoy your preparation for that. And thanks again for sharing all of your stories with us.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Mwah! Big love and good luck.
Thank you. Bye.